Hey, what's up, everybody? Will Keller with Natural Freedom League. I want to take a moment to let people know that John and I, are affiliates of the Exit and Build Summit #2. This is the second annual. This is a conference that's both virtual and in person. And we are affiliates because we strongly resonate with their message. This is what we call detachment activism, where we are detaching from the control system of immorality and slavery by taking action and responsibility in creating community locally or with others. And for that to happen, you need knowledge and information. This is the grammar stage of the trivium. So the Exit and Build Summit 2 is the perfect place to start to gather that information and knowledge. So to learn more about it, this is what you do. Go to our website, NaturalFreedomLeague.com, and you can scroll down and you will see right here, Exit and Build, learn how to buy land and build community, May 13th through the 15th. Register now for free. The first 2 days are free. There is a third day that they charge a fee. This is a more in-depth and detailed and personalized day for the people that are ready to commit and create action. So you can click right here, Exit and Build, learn more, and this will take you to their site, right? The free Exit and Build Land Summit 2 will reveal the best ways to exit tyrannical systems of control and build generational freedom through homesteading, intentional communities, and dozen of other proven strategies for living free now. This is created by John Bush. There are some phenomenal speakers and information that they're going to talk about. And again, this is the grammar stage, gathering that information. So highly recommend it. We are an affiliate, so this is a good way to also donate to Natural Freedom League. They offer us a commission if people end up purchasing the third day, either virtually or in person. It's being held in Texas. So they have limited availability for in person at the actual summit. So, my friends, check this out and see how you like it. It's again, it's free for the first 2 days. So go to our website, naturalfreedomleague.com, click on the Exit and Build Summit, learn more, and check it out. All right. Thanks for your time and attention, and enjoy the episode.
The intention of Natural Freedom League is to expand the understanding of natural law, which is based on objective morality, and to expose the illegitimacy of the belief in authority, and thus the inherent immorality of all government.
We be the Natural Freedom League, cause we become no longer unbegun. We seek in the wisdom, and that's why we did come to this prison of prism. And that's why the beat thumps, and that's why we speak up. We be the Natural Freedom League, cause we become no longer unbegun. We seek in the wisdom, and that's why we did come to this prison of prism. And that's why the beat thumps, and that's why we speak up. We be the
Good.
Hello, everyone. Welcome once again to Natural Freedom League. You can find us at naturalfreedomleague.com. I am John Roeland, here once again with my producer and co-host, Chill Will Keller. What's up, Will?
What's up, my brother? How's it going?
It's going good.
Awesome.
Off to a good start today. Got a nice interview here set up with our friend Melisa Arnautovic. Hello, Melisa. How are you?
I'm good. You pronounced that really well. I'm impressed.
I told John, I'm like, oh, I'm so glad I don't have to pronounce it because I didn't want to butcher it. Awesome.
Good over
Nailed
here,
it, John.
9 hours
Nailed
ahead
it.
of you.
Just like it's spelled. Just like it's spelled. So I'm just going to dive right in. I started looking at some of your videos the last few days, and I went back to an early video, probably from about a year ago. And I saw an interview with you and another gentleman. And what I found interesting was the vibe I got from the video and from your information was very much like counseling and self-help type information. What I found interesting about it was sort of the perspective on what was going on with COVID at the time. The gentleman you were speaking to, I'm sorry, I can't recall his name. The gentleman you were speaking to, and you as well, you were definitely looking at it from an optimistic perspective. So, for example, you were focusing on the changes that were happening specifically in education and in the workplace that were, good things to happen, that we needed some type of drastic event or change to take place in order for those things to change. And so obviously by watching your newer videos, I've seen you switch your focus a bit. So why don't you tell us kind of where you were then and how your thoughts have evolved and changed, and what the focus on your work was then and what it is now? So kind of just a brief synopsis of who you are and what you teach, and and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, sure. Actually, I think that video is from 2 years back. It was right at the beginning of when all this started, if I'm right with the one that you're talking about. So it was all totally fresh, exactly. And I was looking at it as it's the change that we need, especially I was fresh coming out of corporate, okay? So I went straight into the corporate world full-time at 17. And I've always worked at multi-billion, huge, massive corporations, top, the Fortune 500 type. And I did the whole, climb the ladder, get the nice job titles, get lots of responsibility and all that stuff. And so I was in the corporate world for a long time, almost 15 years. And just before COVID hit, actually, so in end of 2019, I left the corporate world to do my own thing. And I was already, my thinking had already shifted, obviously, towards that decision, which was because I realized, first of all, being quite literally so deep in the system, because the corporate world is pretty much the depths of the system you can get, unless you actually work for the government or government enforcement people. The corporate system in itself is the cogs of the machine. So being in it, coming to a lot of my own awakenings, doing lots of my own self-development. So yes, personal development it's one of my core values: development, learning, growth, self-development, not education like the traditional one we that we grow up with. And so I was realizing that this system I was a part of, like, first of all, it was meaningless to me. I was not interested in continuing to put out all of my highest energy and work for just some corporation that's just going to get more and more, going to get richer, and not necessarily selling something that's actually of any value to anybody, So that was really like messing with my head, because I have core values, I have integrity. So I was like, I can't do this anymore. And, one of the biggest risks I obviously ever took in my life was to then quit that comfort, that full-time comfort, that comfort of that, all of it that comes with it. And I did that in full risk. And I remember even people saying to me that were in much higher and much, more comfortable positions than me, actually saying like, I could never do what you're doing. It's so risky. I could never do what you're doing. And I was just like, wow, if like you couldn't consider it, like, so the thing is the risk factor is always going to be there, guys, is what I'm saying. Is like, at the end of the day, that's part of life. And it comes down to, what do you actually stand for? And as someone who, as I said, was always learning, if I wasn't learning and feeling like I was growing on the job, I feel numb like that. And I was a high achiever, so people took advantage of that. I could tell you lots of stories about those kinds of things. But basically, as I left, I was therefore then building my own business, as in, like, you know, when I say building my business, what other word can I use for it other than, you know, humble? It's just me living my purpose. I'm not talking about a huge corporation, right? I mean, I wanted to go away and do my own thing, which was what I love to do and what I have been doing for so many years is teaching, educating. That's what I love to do. I'm a speaker, I'm an educator, I'm a writer. That's what I do. You can see I get passionate and animated the moment I start speaking. It's part of what I do. So I was doing it at the beginning, and I still have aspects of that, which is I was teaching and training and doing workshops for groups for teams, like in companies. So let's say you have a team of 20 people and they want to know how to work better together. They want to know how to have a purpose. They want to know what are each other's strengths? How can they work on that? So I was developing those things. And that's why at the beginning, what you would have seen in that video, I was thinking, yeah, this is awesome, because finally in the corporate world, the corporate world never changes unless they're forced to change. So that was the part I was like, so basically you would work from home once a year. And even that was, you know, you had to have a really serious reason to do that. That's how old fashioned the corporate world was. So that was the lens I was looking at that from the video you were talking about. I was like, yeah, so finally there's going to be this flexibility and all that. Obviously, in the meantime, in the past 2 years have passed and a lot has changed since then in general. And I was just becoming more and more and more and more aware and dedicated as into my own growth, of course, and then also just seeing how a lot of the system, even now that I was then out of the system, right? Now you can see it even more. Now I have more time to actually spend my energy on things that I want to spend to. And what do I want to do is obviously develop myself. If I'm not teaching, I'm learning. That's my life. I'm learning or I'm teaching because it's my purpose. It's what I do. And so as I was learning more and more and more, I was realizing, hold on, this whole system in itself is not the answer. So as you're saying, what you're noticing more in my more recent content and stuff is more like, I don't believe that anyone should actually have a quote unquote job. So as in the fact that we even have corporations, the fact that these corporations are so powerful in the sense of the power they hold. It's not only monetary power, it is power they hold to literally do anything. In all honesty, it's the real government. And I know I've really worked in these places. I've seen it happen. I've seen how they can just bend the rules and do whatever they want because they have the status, they have the power, they have the money, the connections and all that. And, you know, people are just working because they need the money, right? I mean, how many people actually can say that they love the job that they do? So whilst it's nice that people can build corporations where they can employ people and give people jobs, so to speak, ultimately what I want to see is that everybody is the leader of themselves, meaning that no one manages anyone, and we all work more in like a collaboration and a partnership, a bit like what we're doing here right now. And it's very voluntary. I know that's a long way away though, okay? I'm not naive. But I do want to be part of that shift. And I believe that's a shift we're going towards. And I do believe, and I have seen more and more people becoming aware of that and realizing, hey, we're giving all of our time and energy into these few people, few corporations who actually don't give us anything back because they will get rid of us in a second if they had to. This was actually something I saw the other day, that 800 people were fired over a Zoom call that was pre-recorded and it was 3 minutes long. And one guy had done 23 years of service at this company. So I just want also for people to realize, because there's also an old school thinking from generations sort of prior, that loyalty matters. You know, if you're loyal to a company, they'll look after you and things like that. And it's just none of that is true. But the younger generations are realizing that. However, they come with their own issues too. So we've got a bit of, you know, we've got to balance that out. So I even forgot your question, but I'll pause there.
No, yeah, I'll jump in because you said some really good things. And the corporations is like the real government, right? I mean, it's really the management of energy. So you have to understand your worth and your value. And yeah, the corporations, you know, people are just numbers to them. And when you realize well, first understanding to be a conscious creator and take responsibility in your own life and find your soul purpose and then express that to the world is true inspiration for yourself and for others, right? And that's when you can step into a dynamic of just self-worth and self-love. So
Oh, absolutely. And also it gives you energy rather than drains you energy. I can't tell you the difference between coming home after a long day working at a job versus doing my purpose for a whole day. Like the energy dynamic is completely different. One drains you of energy, one actually feeds you of energy. You never feel drained afterwards. That's actually how you know that you're doing something that's part of your purpose and your strengths. That's actually one of the, so I have online courses and stuff as well, for as in they're pre-recorded and public, people can take them, which is exactly about that, discovering your purpose. Because once you know it, and we do have innate strengths, we do, everyone has innate strengths and talents, and then but you can develop them exponentially, meaning what I'm good at may be different to what Will's good at and what John's good at. And when you identify those things, you can build on them, as in you get better at them to a point that there's no ceiling. And when you are good at something you love to do, it only brings you more energy and that self-worth and that self-respect. Because again, if you're coming home every day thinking the only reason why I'm spending all my energy doing this is because of the money, or because of the title, or because I have to look after my kids, or whatever the excuse is, that does a lot to people's self-esteem. And I know a lot of those people. I have met and known a lot of people in very high positions, in very sort of, material wealth, to sort of have it all, looks like it on the outside, but they're miserable inside. And they despise themselves. Like they have seriously low self-esteem. You'll be shocked at some of the people. Or they're very intellectual. Some people are, genius IQs. And then I'll be sitting in a room with them and they are like breaking down because they cannot stand what they've created out of their life. And so, yes, to what you said, Will, as well, is it does inspire not only yourself, but others in just an indirect way in how you live your life, in the fact that people can see it's real, people can see you being authentic, and people can see that actually there is another way. You don't have to just live like that. It's not just about ticking those boxes. Oh, let me buy the house with the fence and the car and the wife and the children and the whatever, the next CEO, the title job. Like people are getting that's not the sort of golden lottery ticket that they've been promised.
Yeah, no, good point. When I think about leadership, and I've touched on this in my freedom presentation, right, that we don't need leaders, we need artists. And what I mean by that is, true leadership is based on inspiration, meaning by leading yourself, right, to knowledge and to your soul purpose, right, you're inspiring others. And to me, that's true leadership. Some people look at leadership as someone that goes first, but nowadays I think people look at leaders as someone to follow, right? Because the person is walking their own path, their own journey, and people just want to abdicate that responsibility and jump on their path and follow them, which is never going to end well, because we're all uniquely different and we have our own different soul desires and paths that we need to accomplish. But I do agree with you on the student and teacher dynamic. This is something even John and I talk about. This is crucial to stay in, and I believe it's a lifelong process.
Absolutely.
You learn, you apply, and then you teach, you output it into the world, and that's a constant dance that people must do, and that's evolution, right?
It is, which is why I'm not big on, or don't really care about someone's certifications or credentials, because just because a piece of paper told you by this date you memorized some kind of information or did something, and let's say for the next 10 years you're just using the same piece of paper to claim that you know how to do something, but you've done nothing over the last 10 years in terms of grow and evolve, it's not that evolution, it's stagnation. So there were so many things that you said on that leadership thing, which I think is really important, in that it's almost as if people have a gene within them, and there actually is some research done that human beings have like a worship gene in them that's possible to be activated. And I feel there is some truth in this, because wherever I look, I deeply study and always have human behavior, so also in neuroscience and psychology and so on. And when you look at human behavior, there is this strange dynamic that people have, that they want to look up to someone to follow, whether it be a leader, whether it be a, authority figure, whether it be what they call today an influencer, right? These are all funny names for the same thing. It's just, you over there, tell me how to live my life. I shall follow you. And as you were saying so beautifully, true leadership is not that. A true leader is really just a leader of themselves, as in they know who they truly are and they're doing their utmost to live their highest self in every moment, also through the learnings, through the mistakes and all those things. And they can remain a humble student on that process. The moment someone is trying to actually tell you how to live your life, what to do, and telling you that you must do that and be that way, that's where people have to have caution. And for me, it's always the clearest definition of it is someone imposing on your free will, or are they honoring your free will? That's the most important question people have to ask themselves when they're consuming any kind of information or, whatever it is that people listen to these days, because there's information everywhere, right? So they look up to people and, people will have just a few millions of followers on YouTube, for example, and you know nothing about this person, but you just look at this number and you think, oh, they must be somebody that's worth listening to if so many people are listening to them. And then without thinking, people start to adopt this person's belief systems, and they start to adopt this person's behavior, and they start to implement it, and they start to wonder why things going weird or wrong in their life when they haven't actually thought about the fact that they've just literally started to follow what someone else is saying and doing, rather than using the process you've mentioned, which is be open, yes, to new information, but actually process it for yourself. Like, what does this mean for me? Have that internal dialogue, and then apply it, test it in your life and see the results and take the responsibility. Because what the other thing that people do is not only to look up to this so-called leader or person they follow, they also can then blame this person for everything that goes wrong in their life. So because you told me, because I followed you, well, you didn't have to do that. You are fully responsible for your own life. So I'm always trying to literally remind people and have people come back to their own inner power, as in you're the one that has the answers. You can learn from various teachers, you can learn from various people every day, all day, but you yourself have to be the deciding factor of what you're going to do with it, not asking somebody else, what should I do? That is, never give your power like that to anyone.
Excellent.
Yeah, I think that's one thing for what we do. We started Natural Freedom League as a organization that was going to go out, and potentially go to like protests. And instead of protesting the government, we're actually educating people about where your rights actually come from, and trying to really ultimately get people to do that inner work. So one thing that Will and I have seen is like, it's one thing to offer people this information about these principles of natural law and where your rights come from. It's another thing to get them to look within and to understand that leader that they're looking for is within themselves. And what advice would you give to people like us who are trying to engage people in that way, to realize that it is like an inner journey and it's not something to be looking outside of yourself? Where have you had success in that? And I said, I think those real world examples that you use are something that's really important to apply to the teaching of natural law.
I agree with you. And first of all, it's amazing that the two of you are even doing that, by the way. First of all, that you're actually going out there physically also and doing it. The importance of physical vicinity is so crucial right now. I've been pointing this out to so many people. Your virtual world is not your only world, okay? It is beautiful that we can connect like this, but what we are losing drastically in the world is this real connection, real human connection and real community. Right. So what you're doing in terms of you physically going out into your vicinity and trying to teach people this is really powerful, because there is an energy there. So when you ask me like how and what's the ways to do it, empowerment is always my method, meaning I'm not telling and I'm not, saying how people. It's always, how do you communicate something in a way that people actually feel empowered, meaning they don't feel helpless now, or they don't feel like they've been yelled at by their parents. So it's an influence game, all right, in the sense of we're all being influenced all the time in any given moment, and we're all influencing each other. That's part of life every day. So how are you doing it in your influence? And storytelling is a huge part of it. I talk a lot about storytelling because it's, again, it's how we are wired as human beings. So for example, John, if you're outside and you're trying to teach people about natural law, but you don't want to just tell them, these are your rights, now go and oppose the government or whatever, you can start by telling a personal story that links to how you broke through that, okay? So that there's ways in which you do this that people connect to your humanity. That's the part that matters. Storytelling is so powerful. Why do you think we have a massive industry called the movie industry that's all about storytelling? That it's a framework, guys. They all use the same framework. There's no mystical there. Once you know the framework, is actually kind of boring because you know exactly how every movie is going to turn out. So it's all about the way you're telling a story and the way you're influencing. And my approach is always empowerment. So like I'm always, every single day that I go out, anyone that I meet or come into contact with, I allow it as an opportunity for this teach-learn experience. I never impose. I never say, it's not about just throwing this information at people. You've got to first see where is their current level of consciousness? How much are they open? At which level are they? If they're, for example, at the moment feeling extreme guilt about everything in their life, the fact that they work, let's say, at a job that destroys lives in some way, perhaps that they, I don't know, cheat on their partner. There could be many things going on in this person's life. And to be honest, in today's world, that's pretty normal, the scenario I just gave you. So if they're on that level and you come to them with something up here, they're going to turn away. They feel like they can't do anything with this information. And this is what a lot of what I've seen in the way people communicate, especially about the truth of the world and everything going on, is it's too in your face, it's too much at once, and people feel helpless because you're communicating something here and they're here. And now they just feel helpless. So it's about those building blocks. And yes, does it sometimes mean, of course, it could be a bit frustrating for you if you're the one that I have all this information and I just want people to be free and all that kind of thing. Yes, but if you want to actually help more people become empowered and literally change their minds, if you want to help influence people, you do have to, it's like a lever, you have to use different levels. So storytelling is a huge way, connecting it to a personal story of your own. I already used quite a few in the beginning of this, right? How is it relatable? Because again, do most people hate politicians? There's nothing relatable about them. There's nothing relatable about them. And they use all these tactics, by the way. This is why I know these things. I understand psychology. I know what they're trying to do. But it doesn't work very well unless they're, what's the word when they're running for president and stuff, senator thing. You guys have different terms over there. So when they're running for presidency, then they'll use all these tactics, this storytelling and the grandiose. You can see it in the way they use their body language, everything. But the moment that they have the power, they stop doing all of that, okay? Because they have you now. So it's the way in which you tell the story and the sort of chunks in where you give the information. So I like to do it like that. And so therefore, even though I'm communicating a message that could be potentially extremely a lot for someone, for example, the fact that our monetary system is an illusion and that money is just a religion. If I just outright say that to somebody, I'll probably lose them very quickly. But if I give them a real life example, which I, for example, can use from my own experience of brand value. Brand value is a perceived value, for example. A brand, so if I'm wearing this top and there's literally just a logo on it and I can change the price tenfold because of that logo, what's changed about the shirt? Nothing other than the perceived value of the brand. Okay, so I'm giving you an example in real life, as you both just nodded, because you can see that's relatable. So now after that, when I tell you, the same thing happens with inflation, the same thing happens, and I can start going into that story. Do you see what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But first, I've given you a real life example that you can actually relate to in the everyday world before just saying, you know, money is evil, just stop using money, burn it. You know what I mean?
That's so good. Oh, you touched on so many things that I want to kind of talk on real quick. So empowerment, right? This is the one great work. This is what the great work is, the Hermetic phrase. The great work is internal. It's about self-development and self-mastery, right? Even the word empowerment, empower means to give power or authority to, and then mentes is mind. So to give power or authority to your mind, and disempower would be to give it away to someone else's mind, right? So empowerment is huge. Storytelling. I'm really big in the mythos and mythology. This is why the oral traditions are usually the most powerful ones, because it's storytelling. This is what the myths are. The myths are stories about the human psyche, characteristics, and qualities that we each have. And this is why, and it's true. So it's timeless and it resonates with everyone. Just like you said, Hollywood, right? They use their sorcery, and you always see the hero's journey in every good like movie or any movie, right? And people can relate to it, and it makes it popular, right? This is why people relate to the rebel in movies and stuff, but yet they don't actually use the introspection within themselves and then apply it to the real world, right? It's
exactly. And
like
that's
they
what you
root
can
for
do
the
as a
rebel.
conduit.
Yeah, exactly. Going out in public, it's a completely different realm, because you're in the realm of the real. You have eye contact and you're connecting with energy, and it's way different. Some of the best experiences that John and I have had as far as our own personal growth is communicating with people, because what you quickly learn is, you're right, you can't just cram information down someone's throat because they're going to close up and be defensive. You need to first analyze to see what level of awareness they're at. So you ask them a few questions, and then this is where practice and strategy comes in on which angle you're going to approach them with. It's very, very empowering to do that kind of stuff.
I love that you pointed out those differences in when you're physically in front of people, because, for example, communication skills as a whole training and workshop I do, and I was doing so much of it fully online since all of this happened. And last year, some things opened again, so I was doing them again in person with groups. And I asked every single one of the end of the workshops, I asked everybody, I said, do you see that there is a difference between doing this in person and doing it online? And every single person, every time, I did it with many, many groups over all of last year. And then I asked them, what is it? What is the difference? And nobody could really put their words to it other than it's an energy. It's an energy, guys. There's just something different. And this is also why part of this whole agenda is to disconnect people from the physical and be purely on the virtual, because you lose that energy, that life force energy it's not the same as if the three of us were in a room together right now. It'd be just totally different. And if the people listening were literally a stadium of 1,000 people kind of thing, it's just a different energy. Is this still powerful for people to learn? Absolutely. But in terms of that work that you were talking about, that inner work, it's the real world that's going to do it for you guys. It's, somebody can sit endlessly watching videos all day, but if they do not physically embody those changes in the real world, how quickly do you learn something the moment it happens to you once? Like, for example, let's say one of those people that you approached and you asked them a question and you got like a really horrible response, or let's say they slapped you in the face. How quickly would you learn from that and then change your response, right? Very fast. Whereas that same lesson could take you months to learn online because you did not get that external mirror, that response. You see, it's very one-sided online.
Yeah.
Not this is a conversation, but I mean, usually people are just consuming, right? They're not actually interacting. So I love that you mentioned that, because that physical part is still so critical, and people are becoming numb, extremely numb to their senses, to their physical vessel, because they're doing everything virtually. Again, the virtual world is very important. It's very powerful. It can empower you if you use it, not if you allow it to use you and control your mind, which is, of course, what all the beautiful social media apps are designed to do. They have the best neuroscientists working on the design. Why do you think they're so addictive? They know what gets you addicted. They know what gets you addicted. So it's about knowing that, knowing your own psychology. The more you learn about, if there's anything anyone should spend time investing in terms of knowledge, start with your own psychology. When you know your own mind, when you understand how your own mind works, everything changes. Everything changes. You really do become empowered, because nothing phases you anymore, in the sense of any challenge that comes your way, you literally know how to deal with it, because you understand what's happening in your mind. You understand now the process. You can go through it. And you're not subject to that endless manipulation, which we do have going on in the world from external sources.
Yeah, absolutely. The online artificial world, right? It's pretty detrimental to people, right? Because it's like, just like muscles atrophy, and the human body, we're all one with the natural world, with nature. So like you said, when we're in person, we're communicating with body language and energy and everything.
Exactly.
So when you stay in the artificial realm for a long period of time, you're going to start to have faculties start to atrophy as well. And this is why, going out into public and talking to people, or just interacting in a social aspect, can be uncomfortable for people that, coming out of quote unquote lockdown, right? It's people are like socially awkward and don't know how to deal with things. And
they
and
don't know how
it's
to
so easy
communicate
just
at all. They don't know how to communicate at all well. It's not that they're socially awkward. They literally have not developed communication skills, especially youngsters. In their critical years of learning social skills, they have been locked down, and also they've been hiding their face. Where do we get most of our social skills? From reading facial expressions. Okay, so when half of the face has been hidden for years, guys, this is not a small thing. This has really changed the psychology of our children, and that's why it's important for us to actually understand this, that if you do not want a world full of psychopaths and you want children to actually start to grow and develop how to communicate with the world, yes, they need to just literally get out in the world and play. There is a little outside my balcony, there's like a garden, a park, and there's real kids here that actually climb trees and build tree houses. I'm so happy to see that, because it's like so rare these days, because kids never leave the house and they're afraid. I've heard of children that are 14 years old that have literally never left their building, and one day the child was like suicidal. He was 14 and he left his house for the first time ever just to go for a walk around the block, and he came home and said to his parents, like, that was so liberating. Like, I'm going to keep doing that. I mean, that's where we are. So yes, the virtual world is become too much of a focus point, and you will lose the essence of what you find beautiful in life if you're not actually out there experiencing it.
Yeah, there's definitely a balance, right? Because of course you can reach thousands and millions with a message and stuff, but again, it comes to the internal development. So you got to strike that balance. It's so easy to talk a lot of shit online, right? And then as soon as someone, responds to you, you can just turn it off. It's like, that's, I mean, it goes both ways.
What's the thing they're calling cancel culture and the oversensitivity? Because it's the moment you say something I don't like, okay, don't want anything to everybody know, we don't want to see this person anymore, remove them, delete them. That's not how the real world works, guys. Like, I mean, you guys know this. We grew up at a similar time, I would say. And it's like, that's not how the world works. Like, you're going to have people you disagree with, and you're going to have to learn how to be in a disagreement with people. It's about learning to deal with the emotions that come up. That's all it is. That person hasn't done anything to you. Have they actually come and punched you in the face? They wrote a comment, and you're not processing the emotion that came up for you. And because you keep suppressing it, and then therefore you're going to use some kind of other distraction, like, oh, okay, then let me just, see how many likes I got on this. Let me go eat some cake. Let me go play some video games or whatever people do. And then that emotion doesn't go away. It stays stuck. And eventually, if you don't process it, it will either explode, as in people will they'll have rage out of nowhere, or it's so suppressed that it will come through physical disease. People get illnesses, like physical illness, because they have not let the energy move through their body. So that all ties together as well. Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah, I think one thing that we really gained out of going out in public and talking to people is we could get actual real world responses to this philosophy that we were learning and that we understood, we took in, and it was meaningful for us. But now you try to explain it to somebody who maybe has never heard of it, and they're right away going to start posing questions and hypotheticals. And I think that's really important for us as teachers to know where people are at and what questions they have that are actually challenging, this philosophy, that we need to be able to work through those ourselves. These may be questions that we haven't thought of. So I think that that's, a really powerful part of, again, meeting people in person.
Perception, because you'll see, the more you get the responses, you'll realize, like, whoa, I didn't realize somebody could interpret what I just said that way. Like, sometimes it's really surprising, because of course what you've intended is what you've intended. It doesn't mean that's how people receive it. And I learned that a lot through workshops, where you see, like, one person over there has got a completely different idea just from an image from a slide of what you thought, based off of, like, somebody over there, of your body language. So you learn real quick, like, oh, okay, people are perceiving things. It may not even be the way you intended it. So yeah, you start to really pick up just how many different ways people perceive the world, and then therefore how you can simply communicate things in various ways so more people will get it. That's all.
Yeah. For example, when we first started going out in San Francisco, we were automatically labeled as Trump supporters, right wing, and so then it would kind of affect the type of messaging we would put out, because then we would kind of put out messaging to let people know that we were neither political party. We weren't talking about government in that way. We were talking about transcending government ultimately. But it was definitely, like, it's always a really good learning experience.
Well, that's first impression. Sorry, I'll add that there. That's first impression. That's important for you to know. So the moment they see any sign you have there, that's the first thing they're thinking, is like, oh, who are these people? Like, so whatever sign you put up is also matters. We judge in less than a second, guys. It's 0.7 seconds we make our first judgment, and it's based on appearance and social status. It's just automatic, okay?
Yeah.
It's just our biology. So the moment people see you on the street, they've already made a judgment. And then, of course, if they're willing to talk to you, whatever, that's different. And if they're conscious, they're willing to look past instantaneous judgment. However, a lot of people will take that instantaneous judgment and kind of, immediately run away. So that's good that you noticed, even for signage, like the sign behind you, for example. The first thing I imagine with the pine cone is wisdom and knowledge. So that's, for example, what comes up for me. But I don't know if you've heard different, like, perspectives from different people. That'd be interesting.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Yeah, I was thinking, John, maybe we should switch up our signs from government is slavery to come pet baby kittens or something.
Yeah.
Just to get them in there and be like,
then
hey,
you give them the little pin that says government is slavery.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, when you were talking about, mythology, it made me think about Jesus and the parables, right? And that the parables sort of, they don't give you a clear answer necessarily. Like, it's for people to dig deeper into, right? So it's the same thing for us, like with our signs. Like, a lot of times we'll use signs that are just questions. Where do your rights come from, right?
Yes.
And then people
especially open questions, meaning that not a yes or no question. Avoid yes or no questions at all costs if you're teaching. do the open questions. Yeah, where do your rights come from? That's a great one. Great example.
Yeah, it works good.
Exactly. But it's funny, even when you say that, people automatically think you're a conservative. Like, I guess liberals don't care about rights, you know?
Yeah, anything with rights or even freedom, right? Yeah, you're conservative, Republican, at least out
Well,
here.
there you go.
that's
Like,
what
you see the
judge.
power of words, and people like to think as if words mean nothing, and they throw them around. And look at that. You can just use one word and someone will label your entire existence just with one word. You just gave me several examples of that. Yet people think like language means nothing. Every single word we use is a spell. And I know various languages, and I can tell you in all those different languages, people use different forms of storytelling, different parables, different allegories to shape your worldview. And it's so powerful that it's actually possible. There are certain languages that actually don't have words for certain colors, and people actually cannot see or describe that color because there's no word for it. I'm not joking. That's a scientific fact.
Yeah.
So the power of words and how we shape our reality from it is monumental. Like, it's huge. It's huge.
I'll tell you something interesting. So Will had recently, I'm writing this article. I'm starting a blog eventually. I want to get some work together first, but I'm writing an article about my experience in my life with dealing with death. And so we had a discussion in it on a Sunday night group. And then Will was mentioning Bob Monroe, the Monroe Institute. He was a man from, forget where he was from, somewhere in America. He began having these out-of-body experiences. This is around 1958. And he started exploring them in a very scientific way, taking notes on what was happening. And just the, what was I going to say about that? Oh, I totally forgot what I was going to say about it. But anyway, yeah, just, I was going to tie in a point. Go say something, Will. I totally forgot what I was going to say.
Something.
No, I'd be interested to hear that blog, as you called it, the your experience with death. So, or was it? Yeah. So
yeah, I think, I want to kind of work through that for myself. I'm finding it to be kind of a very therapeutic process, and actually bringing up the memories of what happened when I was a child and people passed away. Kind of interesting. Once I started writing, I started remembering a lot of things that I didn't initially think about. But I'm trying to remember why I brought up Bob Monroe, but I totally can't. I do have another question now, so we'll move on, and maybe that'll come back to me. But based on where you came from career-wise and where you are now, I wonder what your thoughts are about like saving certain aspects of the system and adjusting things that we have, as opposed to just letting it all burn. I mean, we kind of come from a perspective of like detaching from the system, but then again, we have people in our community who are saying we can't do that, and I don't believe we can do that completely. I think some of the technology we have, some of the systems we have, may have happened for a good reason, and so what's worth saving, and what do we throw away? I mean, just what are your general thoughts on that?
Well, when you say systems, are you referring more to sort of societal systems, or are you just speaking about any kind of system now?
Yeah, maybe societal systems. I mean, I'm thinking, I used to work in education myself, and I remember talking early on in early childhood education courses about how education should be set up, and obviously we're at a point now where we're kind of like, homeschool your kids and get your kids out of the system. I guess my thought with looking at your work is, are there ways that we can tweak the system as it is? Is there anything worth saving from your perspective? Obviously, some people don't feel like they can pull their kids out of the system. So is there ways we can improve on those systems? Or, because I guess in my mind, I'm kind of thinking from like Mark Passio. He talks a lot about like, you can't be a Luddite, right? But then there's another perspective in the freedom movement that's like, you have to pull out of the system and build completely new systems. So I guess just kind of, throwing around your thoughts on that.
Yeah. Well, my thoughts is that we can't fix the system. because it's not broken, because it's supposed to be the way it is right now. I'll tell you that right now. So trying to fix it or break it from within, which trust me, I also try to do. If you try and break the system from within the system will come at you from all angles, all right? It's designed that way, literally like the Matrix. Like they will literally all turn on you to cut you out. Like it's designed to be the way it is. So my honest answer is no, I don't think we should preserve or can preserve any of the current system, because it is designed to enforce a higher class and a slave class. There is no middle class. You can forget about that. Everyone's either a slave, and then there's the masters, but there's only a few masters. And then within corporations, you have a mini structure of masters and slave masters, which is just an illusion, because the masters of the slaves have their own masters, and it's all the same perpetual system. The reason why I don't think we can save it or should save it is because it's built on fundamentally immoral values. It's built on glorifying greed. It's built on glorifying backstabbing people. It's built upon climbing the ladder, which means that only a few can go up that ladder, meaning the many have to stay in a place that... So the system in itself, again, if you just take the corporate structure, okay, I was in it, guys, for more than 15 years. And I'll tell you, as somebody who thought naively I could make a positive and optimistic change within it, you can't, because it's designed that way. And trust me, the people within it want to keep it that way as well. They want to, because the system is built that way for only few people to benefit and remain in power, while the rest of the people are utilized for their energy. They're literally harvested for their energy, their skills and their talents, remaining on the lower levels, remaining on the sort of huge bottom end of the pyramid, if you will, to be exploited. And the education system is prepping people to become that bottom layer, and also making them think that they can't be any more than that, because they strip away creativity completely. And here's the really important part about that. The very aspect of our imagination and creativity, that's the gift we have from the creator. So when you take away the creative aspect, all you have left is the productive efficiency aspect. I can't tell you the amount of meetings I sat in large board meetings or whatever, where everything was just about where can you save money? Where can we become more productive? Where can we be more efficient? What does that sound like? You're dealing with robots, no? You're dealing with machines. Oh, people are machines. Where can we make them more efficient? Where can we make them more productive? Where can we make sure we can get more money with less resource, right? So the system is designed that way. And that's what I mean, that you can't keep aspects of it, because it doesn't matter who's in it. The system itself is the problem. So I believe we need an entire different setup of systems. I don't believe that there should be any form of government, because I personally don't believe that anybody has a higher authority over anyone else. I never have. Since I was a child, I never have. I do not believe that anyone should tell anybody else what to do. And on top of that, just think about, again, use an everyday example that people can relate to. If you spend 20-something years going to school, what about all the people that get degrees, they go to university and everything, to go to a job where they're going to pay you subpar for all the qualifications you now have, because you don't have the experience, to which you could not get experience because you had to go first to get your diploma that they asked you for before you can even qualify for the job, to then be told what to do, as in you can't even use the skills that you apparently have spent all this time building, because they tell you, excuse me, I don't want to hear your idea. This is your job. This is what you have to do. And that's how it goes. That's how the system works, guys. So it's not there to help people grow. It's not there to help people evolve. It's not there for us to create a better world. If it was, we would already be using free energy. If it was, we would already have ended world hunger. We would have already have, clean water for everyone. So it's designed to be the way that it is. And that's a whole topic in itself. However, let's talk about the solution aspect. So this is why I was telling you about the fact that the physical and local thing is so important, because people need to get back to their local communities. Meaning, when things are voluntary, okay, we would still do what we do, okay? If you live your purpose, so for example, I love what I do, whether I get paid for it or not. I could be a millionaire right now if I'd have chosen the pure systematic path. I'm not, and I don't want to be. I want to live my purpose, okay? So people, when they do a job that they love, they will do it regardless of a salary and a wage or whatever. So when you have a structure where people are developing their strengths, their mastery, especially from childhood. When you talk about taking them out of that system, you would build different setups. So for example, if locally here, if we literally try to paint a real picture, I'm a teacher, I'm an educator, I love to do that. So I would literally offer locally, hey, I can be the person that helps teach about expanding consciousness and all these things and whatever. This other person may be a fantastic cook, and they want to offer their talent to that. There's local farmers that offer their produce. Do you see what I'm saying? So it's all local and it's voluntary, okay? The moment you try to centralize and globalize things, you're going to get the same result. You're going to get a dead, cold system that's just trying to regurgitate stuff. There's no humanness in it. Now, I'm going to give you a real example from the real world where I've actually seen this happen. I was born in a country called Bosnia. There was something called the Balkan War. You may have heard of it. It was in the early 90s, okay? So in the early 90s, my parents moved to the UK, which is where I grew up in London, when I was 3 years old, okay? We would go back and forth to Bosnia after the war was over for like vacations. And I got to see people from real life in real war days, like everything was destructed. People's houses were destroyed. My parents' house, everything was destroyed. Roads were destroyed, everything. So, you know, that main thing people say, who would build the roads if there's no government and no one's paying taxes, who would pay the roads, okay? So this is a real example. We would go back after it was safe to go back for vacations and stuff. And slowly, we literally rebuilt the community locally, meaning there was where our house was in the town and where the sort of main town was, it was about 5 kilometer drive. The road was so bad, it took about an hour for that 5 kilometers to drive. That's where we were, okay? In a little town of about 50 people, they all said, okay, we want to build that road. All right, let's put our money together and pay the local person that builds the roads to build out that road. That was about 15 years ago. That road still stands today. If my parents were paying every month from their wages in taxes to take care of that road, it wouldn't have in any way close came to building that road and sustaining it, or the amount of money it would need. So I'm trying to give you a real example of how it's possible, because who are the people that actually create anything in the world? It's people. It's not the guy in a suit in a house, in the White House. It is real people. Okay, and people actually love what they do. The builders, people that actually love to build. I walk past building sites all the time. They love what they do. They won't stop doing it just because a government system doesn't exist. You locally agree these things, guys. And this is why the personal responsibility has to come in. So yes, I'm giving you real examples, but the path to get there for teachers like us, which is why, as Will called it, it's called the great work for a reason. This is going to take a while. Because for us to get to that level of autonomy and responsibility, people need to be personally responsible. As in, they need to actually, without somebody saying, hey, where are you? Come to work or you won't get paid, right? People need to cultivate that responsibility in themselves. And you need the relationships. This is what I'm saying about local community. If you don't know your neighbor, if you don't know any of these people, then no, it's not going to work, because you are disconnected from community. And so that needs to be rebuilt. I happen to live in a place now, I'm in Austria. I happen to live in a place that's a relatively small, coming from London, which is a huge city, coming to a relatively small, I'd call it more of a town. Very local, 80% local businesses. Everyone pretty much knows everybody. And what I mean by that is that we do things for each other. We already are setting up this system. As in, you have to be true to your word. If I say, hey, tomorrow I can come and do this or do that, you actually mean it, and you actually show up and you use your word as an agreement rather than, you know, physical contracts and all these things. So, I mean, this is a huge topic, John, but like that, I hope that gives just a little bit, some examples, because no, we can't keep some of the current system, because eventually it will just come back to the very same thing it was supposed to be. We need something completely different. However, that requires a different level of consciousness. And that's why what I do and what you guys are doing is critical, because you can only create something different from the level of consciousness you're creating it from. So if people are still on the consciousness level of, I am a slave, I'm not worthy of autonomy, or I deserve to hate my job and live a mediocre life, well, then nothing will change. But when we help them come through that, empower them with the skill set, with the mindset, with the ability to work through all of their inner traumas, inner crap, and to develop the actual skills they can use in the real world. There's one guy here, like, bless him, he's retired. He's easily retired. He's over 70, 80 or something. He comes out the street every day. I go on morning walks, and he like paints and does things along the riverbank because he just loves to do it. This is what I'm saying. Like, no one's paying him. He doesn't work for the state. He doesn't work for the local council. He's doing it because that's his thing. That's what he loves to do. Yet it's helping everyone. And I just want people to like get a bit of a taste of that is actually how it is. You're all doing it now. You don't all work just because you're paid for it. We are all here. We're innately creative. We're here to build and create things. So we would just be doing it with a different setup. What do you guys think?
Yeah, no, I think you nailed it. That was phenomenal. This is what detachment activism is all about: detaching from the false, immoral system, and the activism is the action. So you just described perfectly how a moral society will operate with, voluntary interactions, and by people doing what their sole purpose is, what they love to do, that is actually contributing to the whole, to the community. And it always starts locally, just like the great work always starts internally. It's internal, and then it moves external. So and it's interesting too, is because we get these questions a lot, right? Well, who would build the roads? And
the same people that build them now, just with a different setup.
Exactly, because people think government is an actual entity, right? In reality, we're talking about human beings, but we're talking about the state of mind.
Correct.
So, and this is where imagination has been deadened in a lot of people, right? They kill the imagination, or they dim it, and then people cannot imagine human beings working together and being creative and creating. So it's almost like just stopping the lowercase c creator inside of us, right? When you do that with imagination and creativity, and it always comes back to the state of mind, mentalism. And this is what the social engineers, they want to do. And this is why they put that wedge in the family dynamic and get the kids in the indoctrination schools, so they can indoctrinate to speak into, imbue ideology and imbue state of mind, the operating system. They start that extremely early, when absolutely the best thing you can do for very young kids, even going up into the teenage years, is to promote imagination as much as possible.
Absolutely.
And creativity.
Absolutely. And to your question, John, about the school system and how do people build them out of schools and stuff. And it's like, well, think about, if the system is so great right now, why is it that both parents, two people, have to be in full-time work to even sustain having a child, one, let alone more, okay, to sustain living, and yet never see their child? They have to hand over their child to strangers, guys. The fact that we have this system is the only thing that makes it, to Will's point, makes it even mentally applicable that these guys are strangers. You're giving your children to strangers. In a real healthy mindset, no one would actually ever do that. Like, you don't know these people, you've never met them, you have no idea what they're going to be giving your children. But because we have it as a structural norm in society, people think it's okay. And they don't even know what their children are being taught. And as you said, it's all about the imagination. It's also not, okay, you need to basically repeat the entire school curriculum at home. Who says you have to do that? Actually, children are really smart. They're actually a lot smarter than us if you just let them do their thing. Like, you'll be surprised how much children learn just from their experience, from being out. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I remember the days where we were just out all day playing, and our parents just said, come home when like the lights come on, like when it gets dark, because that's how you learned. You learned by being out in the world and creating and doing things. And then you find your things, and then you start to develop them. And children find this really early, and now they're doing it even earlier. And again, I'll give you a sort of statistic if it helps people, in that What happens at the moment in the school system is, let's say, so you're, Will, you said you have a daughter, right? So let's say when she comes home, well, not you, but probably I would say an everyday person would say, like, okay, they come home with a report card and she has like a 5 in math, a 5 in science, and like a 2 in English. Which one would you say that she would need to work on?
English.
Right. Most people will be like, oh, you've got to work on the one that's your weakness. That's how like the system operates. We've got to get you to the level of average. But that actually, all you can ever do with that is bring everyone to the same base level of average, meaning crap, to be average or everything. Whereas when you focus on someone's strength, if you say, okay, really good at math, you're really good at the science, let's just focus on that one. When you focus on something that you are good at, the result is actually exponential. It's a 700% increase, which was done in the thing. You can get up to 70% better in something that you're bad at. That's the like average. You can get up to 70% good at it. So let's say you despise math, you're horrible at it, you can get to 70%, generally speaking. However, if you adore and love science and you work on that, as in to develop it, it's 700% is the average like development, which basically means it's exponential. It never ends. So think about that mindset. Imagine how many more incredible, creative, inventive things we would have in the world when children focus on strengths, which may be a few things, okay, and not try to be average at 20 different things. That's why you don't have the geniuses and the creatives and whatever, because everyone's trying to just make sure they have an average mark. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
so it's a different way
atomizing,
of
right?
Yeah.
They want to atomize all the kids instead of, self-direct their talents and their qualities. And it's the same thing with adults, right? When we're internally motivated, that's when we learn. So, self-directed learning works for adults and children. It's the same process.
Oh, absolutely. The inner child never goes away. I mean, I say even your 60-year-old grandma still has an inner child. Like it's always there. And actually, that's something really important to always remember. When anyone is ever like in your face or pisses you off or something, just see the inner child in them. Just see the 5-year-old and see how that 5-year-old is neglected. I'm serious. This is not a joke, because this is what's actually happening. When someone's screaming at you, when someone's angry, when someone's whatever, see the inner child. I'm not saying condone it. I mean, see where it's actually coming from, which is a place of fear, neglect, abandonment, and actually you'll start to feel compassion and you'll approach them in a different way, because a lot of people feel simply just abandoned and fucked, quite frankly, from the system. That's why they're just all miserable all day. I mean, I was in the post office the other day and somebody just was trying to do something, and the guy that works there said, hey, you can go to this other thing, like the queue is free. He was basically giving him good news, and the guy just like raged at him. He was like really pissed off, and the guy that was working there looked at me and was like, what just happened? Like, I was giving him good news. And I said, look, dude, the world is crazy. Like, everyone's pissed off at everything, like legit. Everyone is mad at everything. So no, the system doesn't work. It will need to come down. It's a long process in between, but nothing can be built anew from this comfort zone. It's like what's to come is way better, but we need to actually be part of the change. And that's actually something I do really want to mention, because there is a whole school of thought right now is that everyone just needs to wait for it. Wait for the new age. Wait for the new world that's coming. When is it coming, guys? When is it coming? How long do I have to wait for? Like, no, you actually have to be part of it. So there's not enough people that are actually activating, as you said, well, teaching, but also being the activator, the activist of this. It's all of us, guys. There's no savior. There's no one person. There's no 10 people. It's all of us together.
I think one of the most powerful words you just said was compassion. And I think that's really describes the strength of your work and your approach, and what, all of us as natural law teachers should take from you is, having that compassion for people and having that drive to really want to help everybody where they're at, and to think of, unique ways to touch people, from where they're coming from. The story you told about, Bosnia is just a great example too, of just like the art of storytelling, right? Like they're right there, that personal story could probably reach someone, you know, much more than, you know, explaining to them why government is slavery and, you know, where your rights come from and all that stuff.
I'll give you a little tip on that. It's because it hits you in the emotions, and your emotions are in your long-term thinking. Okay, any memory you have, let's do a little test now. Think of one memory, whether it was a week ago, a year ago, 10 years ago, anything. You got what? Okay, now tell me, is there an emotion linked to the memory?
Yeah.
So all of our emotion that's long-term, memory that's long-term is linked to emotion. And that's why storytelling is so powerful, because people fucking remember it and you want them to remember. So you just said you might remember my Bosnia story 5 years from now, you see. So it's not the story necessarily, it's not the context, it's did it connect to the emotion, and did I therefore portray the right message that I wanted to give in that moment? So it's not about pure facts, it's not about just giving people data. That's why whenever I see people's lots of charts and figures and facts, and it's like, nah, that does nothing. Like, what is it really telling you? What's the story behind the chart? Like, people have been obviously obsessed with the numbers about this whole thing, right? I just call it the plague now. Everyone's about these numbers, and I'm just like, they're numbers in the screen. They mean nothing. It's the context. I used to run an entire department that was about data analysis and insights, and I can tell you, whatever story you want to tell with data, you will tell. The numbers don't mean anything. It's the story of the human being behind the numbers, guys. So again, it's like, the more you can use these real life examples instead of just saying like 100 million of this, or, you know, 50,000 of this, like, great, what does it actually mean? And again, the people that are in very high positions of power, they know how to utilize this in what way? Fear, right? Drive fear. So we need to do it in empowerment, driving empowerment. So that's the shift I make. So when you understand it, you know what they're using for fear, I use it for the empowerment.
Phenomenal.
You know what I realized last night is that fear is an anagram for free. If you just move the letters around, you know, it's basically the same word, right? You're either in fear or you're free, right?
Yeah, because you have to face your fear. Everything in life is facing your fear. And what's the prima materia, the primal fear is the fear of death. So you either see it and run from it, or you face it and go through it. And that's so fear and love are, you know, they're right there. You have to.
They're right there. That goes into the principle of polarity, which is one of the most powerful ones.
Absolutely.
The principle of polarity, which is basically, you can only shift the scales of the same thing. And fear and love, which is freedom, right? Fear and love are actually the varying degrees of the same scale. So you can't turn, you know, love into hot or cold, but you can't turn it into shame or guilt. You can turn guilt, for example, into apathy. That can switch on a different. So it's the degrees of the same thing. Like hot and cold are the same. It's temperature, but it's like, what degrees is it? Love and fear is the same, like that. Or love and freedom. Sorry, freedom and fear. It's what you were saying with the anagram. It's like, it's just literally it's like a tipping scale, and the only thing that tips between the two is whether you have courage or not. That's the deciding. And the courage you can't wait for it to come. Like, courage is you taking action. That's you using will. So courage is going forth, trusting in your ability to actually make decisions in your own life, not trusting that everything's going to work out. No, trusting in your ability to actually be the leader of your own life. And you will find, when you use courage, you will always tip the scale towards the freedom, love. Like, if you don't use courage, then yes, you will descend to fear, which will cripple you, or literally will physically disintegrate you. But it's interesting because they are so connected. It's just that courage is the part that people need to ignite.
That's a good point. You know, that's the thing about polarity. It's perceived duality. right? It's perceived polarity. Really, fear isn't a force, it's the absence of love.
Correct.
So it's how we perceive it, and then that affects us. So yeah, it's really good. And I like
that also points to just being able to balance the two, you know, and you know, it's all about not being out of balance, you know.
Because fear is useful. It can direct. Every emotion is useful. This is the thing. You're not suppressing the emotion, but it's what is it telling you? It's a guiding compass. So if I am afraid in this moment, what is the fear telling me? What am I currently afraid of? Am I afraid to be embarrassed? Am I afraid to be rejected? Am I afraid to lose my job? What are you afraid of? Don't just be afraid of the emotion and stop there. You know what I mean? It's telling you something. And it's telling you the very thing that you need to break through. So
and compass makes up the word compassion, right? So it's all about that. Is your compassion is that guide for you, you know. That really is. This is something I've been working through in the past few days. I've been talking to Will a lot, and listening to your work has kind of helped me that natural law is actually a process that we're constantly participating in. And it is our conscience. It is our compassion.
And the universe is responding to how you're doing it. And the thing is, I actually love that you're bringing that up, because our universe, at least, leans towards or has a tendency towards compassion, which is why our universal laws are built around morality. So it's the fact that you're connecting so much with the word compassion is also speaking to that, because that's actually why we have universal laws, natural law principles that are based upon not harming people and so on, because our universal principles, for at least our universe, has a tendency towards compassion. That's why we're rewarded for that. That's where the universe protects you. By rewarded, I don't mean with monetary things and, you know, buying your yacht or whatever it is that people think of when they think of abundance and manifestation. I mean, like, the universe will literally always protect you and help you when you are aligned with that law, which is based upon compassion. That the reason it's based upon compassion is otherwise it wouldn't be about protecting and not imposing on other people's free will. It wouldn't be about that. That wouldn't matter. Then it would be it's all about me, you know, it doesn't matter who I hurt thing. So compassion is a key factor that needs to be integrated and developed. And when you look at everything from that lens of compassion and understand that, then you can see, okay, yeah, why would I do something to somebody else that I know would be fucking painful and horrible? Like, why would I do that? Everyone actually has this innately in them. It's just that it gets stripped away through the whole system that we want done with.
Yeah, programming and conditioning, right? And this is part of the internal work, shadow work, right? What triggers you and why? What are you afraid of? You know, what are your fears and why? And literally write these down and you know, and dissect them and go through them and face them. That is the shadow work, right? Why do I believe what I believe? Why? And you start to peel back the layers of your own programming and conditioning.
You do, and there's so much of it, and there's so much freedom beyond it. That's the point. There's so much freedom beyond it, because like you were saying, John, you started to write, right? And you're finding it therapeutic. There's a reason it's therapeutic. It's because you're literally transmuting the energy. You're taking the thought out of your mind through your hand onto paper. It's a form of creation and transmutation of energy. So even if no one's ever going to see it or whatever, it's therapeutic for you, but it's also part of the creative process. I also like when I go to write something or create something, I just allow it, like whatever to come through. And like you will eventually get to that point where it's just flow state, where you're not even thinking. It's just happening. It's just happening. And that spot is like where you enter infinite intelligence, which is a whole other, like, it's just so, you don't, like, time stands still. You don't know, has it been half an hour, 3 hours, but like you were so intensely in something that everything kind of disappears. And then you start to have more of those connections with the divine, because that's also what people are missing, right? Like now everyone's either completely atheistic, materialistic, nihilistic, solipsistic, or even if they are religious, it's, you know, dogmatic. So it's like connecting with the divine truly is something beautiful and powerful, but when done with that place of compassion and wanting to do that inner work. And like you said, well, like you got to face your fears, and it's actually not as scary as people think. It's just that you actually got to look at yourself and have compassion for yourself first and foremost, because how many people beat themselves up? Just think about things that people say to themselves all day. Anyone that's listening, I really want you to be honest. What are the things you say to yourself all day? Like little things. Oh, you idiot. Oh, you forgot to do that. Oh, how stupid you did that again. Or like, how could you not do that? You're speaking to yourself like that all day, every day. And you have to go to bed with that. Like you're stuck with those thoughts and all that. And you're creating your reality with that narrative. You're creating it. So imagine what you're feeding yourself through your own thoughts, which you're getting from your belief systems, which is just a thought you keep on repeating. Belief system can be changed at any moment if you just change the thoughts you think. But of course, what do you consume? And because people are constantly being bombarded by information from the external world, they have to be selective with what they consume. Are you learning? Are you gaining wisdom from something? Or are you just watching something to pass time or to feed your fear through like, news outlets and so on? It doesn't help you. How is it helping you to know who got murdered or who got sick or whatever? Like, it's just not useful in any way, shape or form. All it does is feed the fear. All it does is feed the fear. This thing with the whole Ukraine, for example, Ukraine, a country not that close to here, but apparently now everything's about them being part of the European Union. And that's what's going to fix this whole problem. And on top of that, it's like, okay, so all of our bills have gone up 128%, energy bills. Now, please tell me how that makes sense when my building that I live in is CO2 neutral and it's based purely on solar energy. How is it that fossil fuels have increased my energy bill by 128%? Like, I literally laughed when I got the letter. I was like, this makes no sense. And this is where people have to realize that how much of this it's fake. It's just fake. It's just numbers playing around, playing on fear. So it's like, there's a war. Now there's going to be a loss of supplies or whatever, and therefore we have to increase the price. But hold on, you just increased the price, but nothing changed with the supplies. See, it's all game. It's a story.
Fear and scarcity. It's all
fear and scarcity is
behavior control.
Scarcity is one of the number one principles of influence. There are principles to influence. One of the top ones is scarcity. Why are diamonds so popular and so expensive? Because they're scarce, right? It's perceived scarcity. They did the same thing with flights. They had a flight from London to New York that was twice a day or something. They switched it to once a day and hiked up the price by double, and they sold more because it became scarce. But it's not scarce, it's perceived scarcity, you see. It's when people buy into it and say, oh yes, it's scarce, so therefore I must buy. I must give more energy. You see, so now you're perpetuating it. But if people realize their own power, meaning that, no, I don't buy into that, so I don't need it, and I won't give my money and energy into it, then it doesn't work. They won't continue to use those principles. They use them because they work on the people. And that's why I said, like, knowing your psychology is so important. Authority is another huge principle of influence. Perceived authority. Somebody wearing a white lab coat and you immediately perceive them as some authority figure, like a doctor, and like, oh, they must know what's right for me. That people will actually do seriously inhumane things because someone wearing a white coat tells them to. I could give you an entire example of that, where that actually happened. They did a study where, I don't know if you know this one, with the
the Milgram experiment.
Is that what it could be? That one? Yeah,
where they were shocking the participants.
Yeah, that's one. Yeah, exactly. That's another example. So yeah, these are all called principles of influence or principles of persuasion. And it's all about knowing your psychology. It's all just mind tricks. And so don't buy into the fear. Laugh at it. Humor is a hugely powerful thing. Humor is so powerful. It disperses a lot of the energy. And then change what you do with it. Don't feed into it. Don't react to it. Use your energy for something better, for something good. Invest in the things that actually you want to see in this new future. I, for example, only support local businesses that are not restricting my freedom to serve me. I'm not going to enter your store or your place or whatever if you're going to tell me that I need to do something against my will because so-and-so said so. Okay, then I'm not going to give you my business. We've come to that point now. After 2 years, guys, after 2 years, we've come to a point. I mean, I can't speak for the US, but over here, we have literally been one of the worst countries in terms of how they've handled this whole situation. Such tyranny. We've actually been put, apparently there's a report that comes from Sweden about most corrupt countries, and Austria has now been put by Namibia and Ghana. Nice to know. So there you go. I live in a country that is as corrupt as Namibia and Ghana. So what I'm saying to you is that the politics, the government, it's so corrupt, and people, though, are supporting it. That's the issue. So the people that are awakening and conscious to it, the more of us there are that are not supporting these horrific tyrannical behaviors and so-called authorities, then the less power they have. So people need to also step into their power. And people, the most thing that they're afraid of, honestly, is just what other people will think. That's it. People are just afraid of what will someone else think, because I exercise my fucking rights to do what I want to do as a free human being. Like, what on earth are people thinking? Like, to say, oh, well, I'll risk my life because at least it doesn't make me look crazy or a conspiracy theorist in front of these people that I don't care about. Like, really, guys, like,
deep-seated abandonment issues is where, like, a lot of that comes from, right? Just want to be loved, and they can't love themselves. They don't know how to love themselves because they haven't done that work. So they externalize it, right?
And the self-love is where it needs to start. You cannot give what you don't have, and you also cannot seek it from elsewhere. It's always going to be tainted in that way. It's a give and take dynamic. It's like covert narcissism. It's like these people pleasers who they claim to be nice people, but they're doing it to get something. And everyone does this in a way when they're not, as Will just said, when it's not coming from self-love. So yeah, it always comes back down to the inner work first. You're right.
Well said.
Yeah.
Yep.
And a lack of courage. I think that's one word that stands out to me. I mean, it's similar to empowerment, but encouragement is a lot of what you're doing, and
to be yourself, because the thing is, even if you are going to try and be what you think other people want you to be, people are still going to criticize you. People are still going to say you're not doing the right thing. So isn't it better to actually be your real self in that process, when people are anyway going to criticize you, going to judge you, rather than be a fake persona? So that's why that's something I always end like a lot of my workshop with, is literally the biggest gift you can give yourself and the whole world is your own self-actualization, because the very purpose that you're here is to be your unique expression, your unique thumbprint, of the creator. There is no one else that is you. So the fact that everyone's trying to fit in to be like this specific kind of person, there is no such thing anyway. It's a trap. Actually, the best thing you can do is be your unique self. And by the way, that's when people will actually like you anyway. They will see that you're being real. They'll see that you actually have some fucking backbone, that you actually have some integrity, that you stand for something, that you have some values, that you're not just some person copying and regurgitating everything that everyone else is doing, to get some kind of attention on a screen. People can see through the stuff. Like, come on, who do you think you're fooling anyway? Like, and again, then you can't stand to look at yourself in the mirror because you're lying, and just one criticism will fucking break you because you have no self-esteem. Like, you need to learn to love yourself, and the only way you can love yourself is to get to know who you actually are. And how to know who you actually are is to sit with yourself, do that inner work, the shadow work, the whole thing, and then you literally, the courage and the confidence comes naturally, in all honesty, after that, because your foundation becomes so strong that nothing can tamper with it. You know who you are. If you don't know who you are, then you're very easily swayed with the winds. Then you're like, oh, okay, that's what everyone's doing now. That's what everyone's saying now. Okay, yeah, let me quickly change myself to do that. It's fragile. So a strong foundation has to come from you knowing who you actually are. And that takes you getting to know yourself, including the things you don't like about yourself, and integrating them. Because you don't like them just because you've denied them. That's it.
Yeah. What John said about the, the compass, compassion, what happens when you're running around, like you said, blowing in the wind, the compass, the needles are spinning, right? But when you're grounded and you're in one position, you get a clear direction, right? So
I love that.
Yeah,
Exactly. That's exactly how it is.
Real quick, you triggered my memory why I brought up Rob Monroe. So
Hey.
Bob Monroe, he kind of studied his out of body experiences, and then he was describing what he was experiencing in the other realms. He called here was locale 1, so he could travel in his astral body in locale 1, and but then there was like locale 2. So there was a level he was at where it was all thought. Everything was thought. It was the thought realm, and everyone knew your thoughts, right? So it made me think like that's kind of like a good like exercise to give people. Like imagine like everyone could hear your thoughts, you know? Because I have these like what's the word? What's the word, Tourette's type thoughts, you know, where it's like I would never say this stuff in front of people, you know, and like, but it's like I probably shouldn't even like think it, you know, and then but then we live in a world where you think, well, I can't control my thoughts like that, but actually we can control our thoughts.
Yes,
and
you can.
To imagine this realm where you were accountable for not just what you say, but for what you think. You know, that could be an important like exercise for people to consider.
Definitely, because what you think is what you think is a prelude to what you're about to say and do. It always is. Like the thought comes first, triggers an emotion, and then triggers your behavior. And you have a tiny gap between those thoughts and what you then do. But when you widen that gap, like it's so worth it. Just that like second between what you just said, like, and even being aware of it, even like you said, you're aware of the Tourette's thoughts or whatever, you can start to like make fun of it, humor it in the sense like if a judgment comes up or something, and you said like if somebody heard what I just said, what would happen? You'd probably actually laugh. Like think of how honest kids are. I remember this story from one of my old colleagues where he went to lunch with his family or something, and the parking place had no parking spots left, but there was one parking spot that had one of those orange cones on it, like you shouldn't park there. And he got up and he got out the car, he moved the cone and parked there. And they go to lunch. And the owner of the restaurant comes up to their table and says, "Hey, did you park at the place that there was a cone there?" And he goes, "No, I didn't." And his son goes, "Yes, you did, Dad. I saw you move the cone."
Yeah.
And it's just like, I think it's a perfect example of like, yeah, that's truth. And that's taking responsibility for what you fucking did, you know? And it's like, that's the reality, guys. We do live in a world where people are lying like that all the time. And like you said, we're doing it also with our thoughts. So integrity starts with the thoughts. So that's actually what they talk about when it comes to going into fourth density consciousness, okay, which is like our next level of consciousness. When they talk about telepathy, in order for that to be possible, we need to be able to access all of each other's thoughts. In order for us to be able to access all of each other's thoughts, not, by the way, intrusively, apparently you can like stop it if you want to, but just imagine for a second, like you said, that everyone can access your thoughts. That's the reason why the fourth density plane is the plane of compassion and unity consciousness, because it means we literally need to be okay with the fact that we can imagine that everybody would have access to our thoughts. We need to get to a point that we are so integral and aligned with what we say, what we do, and what we think that we wouldn't want to hide what we're thinking. And I think we really do have a long way to get there. But as you said, it's a great exercise in thinking that, hey, that's got to be our like marker. That's what we've got to consider that. And I always think of it as the universe is always watching. So even no matter who's around me, I think the universe watched me, the universe saw me, the universe heard me. And I use that as my compass. Like, I don't really care who's watching or who sees my stuff. Like I care like from the universe perspective, like, because you can't escape that. You can't escape the universal law. So you're anyway only conning yourself if you think that just because a person didn't see you, that you got away with it, you know? So it's not to say it in a way that's like, you know, you got to watch out or something. It's just actually your life does become a lot more beautiful and more in flow because you're just not trying to fucking pretend to be someone you're not. You're actually just being authentic and honest. And we need to be more honest. And people are like, oh, they're so sensitive and everyone would get upset. It's like, honesty doesn't mean you're mean. Honesty doesn't mean that you're some aggressive person shouting abuse at people. Honesty just means you actually mean what you say and what you do. You have like integrity with that. You're true to your word. And that does actually mean a lot, especially in today's world, because it seems to be lacking a lot. And it is something that's a good guiding compass, we use Will's analogy. Keeps you strong and the path clear.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we definitely can learn that attribute from kids. I promote that to my daughter too. I tell her, just tell me how it is. Tell me how you feel. Tell me what's on your mind, and don't lie. And so in that sense, yeah, we can learn a lot from children. But well said. Everything you said, I definitely agree with. That's great.
Yeah, the all-seeing eye is actually right here. So Melisa, why don't we plug your website and let everybody know what you have going on and where we can find you?
Yeah, you can find me on liveintrainingeurope.com, which I think is, living without the G, because it means to live from within. Europe is just because it was the only domain available. I am global. I have online courses and workshops that I do in person. So unless you live here, online courses, what people can check out for well-being, for how to discover and live your purpose. And also I just have a lot of free content. I have a podcast, I have YouTube, I have just endless amounts of videos and audios and things that people can check out. So just go to the website and they can find me there.
Awesome. Fantastic. Yeah, highly recommend viewers to check out your website and check out your content. So I think you're doing great work. And it's definitely an aspect that people need to hear and dive into often and consider. Your theme, creating freedom through empowerment, and those are the words that I'm using, but that's kind of what I get from your fantastic content. So thank you.
And thank you too as well for doing the great work. I appreciate you guys.
Yeah, thank you, Melisa. I feel like we could have just kept talking for a few more
I know.
hours. But...
Yeah, we'll have to get you back on again for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
Because I got like a page of notes right here. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's going to be like 3 hours.
Oh, yay.
So we'll do it. We'll do it again.
All right.
Awesome.
And thank you, Will.
All right, brother. It's a good one.
And always remember, put something good in the air and plant something good in the earth. Peace. The intention of Natural Freedom League is to expand the understanding of natural law, which is based on objective morality, and to expose the illegitimacy of the belief in authority, and thus the inherent immorality of all government.
We be the Natural Freedom League, cause we become no longer unbeatable.